How about some sports? Let's start it off with the NFL, Pete. What do you got?
Let's kick it off. It's almost mid-season. It's very close to the middle of the season. We played either 6 or 7 games, and now obviously the Vikings are playing the Rams tonight. That's all great. Here's what I wanted to focus on today. Who's in trouble right now? And I'll give you a couple of them, John. The Cowboys and the 49ers are both in trouble. The Cowboys are 3-3. The Niners are 3-4 right now. This is the team, the Niners, that everybody, including myself, said at the beginning of the year, this is a team that's going to be in the Super Bowl, likely against Baltimore. That would be my choices. What I didn't see coming was Ayuk out. Receivers, go through the entire receiving core over there with the 49ers, and people are pointing the finger at Brock Purdy going, hey, he doesn't look that good. Well, he probably doesn't look good because just about every wide receiver on the team is on the IR, or maybe they're going to be able to come back. He hasn't had Christian McCaffrey the entire season. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why the 49ers are struggling. They're playing each other, the Cowboys and 49ers. If the Niners lose that game, John, they're going to have 5 losses, and I think it's going to be a really difficult hill to climb under those circumstances for them to be able to get back into the playoff picture. There's just too many good teams out there in other divisions. So it's going to make it tough. I think when you look at the AFC, I got a matchup where you can see a similar type thing playing out. The Eagles, they're fine right now. They don't look great, but they're fine right now. They figured out something that wasn't that hard to figure out. They've got a running back by the name of Barkley that all you got to do is give him the ball. They didn't give him the ball. Finally started to give him the ball. Wow, they got 4 wins so far. So I don't think that they're in as much trouble as they started out when they didn't look very good early. But Cincinnati, holy smokes. The Cincinnati Bengals, Joe Burrow is having an absolute awesome year. But who's not having an awesome year is the defense of the Cincinnati Bengals. It's a real problem. They are so bad on defense, John, that he's got to outscore what they're giving up or they're not going to get there. Well, they're 3-4. They lose this week and they turn into a 3-5 football team. They're looking up at Pittsburgh, way up top, Baltimore, even higher up top. They're out of it. I mean, I don't know that they can recover from that if they lose this next game. So I just thought it would be interesting to see that it's amazing how fast the NFL develops. But the Niners got to win. This is a must win. And I'll tell you what, must win this week for Cincinnati as well.
Well, don't disagree. I'll point out, Pete, that something that is not very typical of Harbaugh, and I don't mean Jim Harbaugh for a change. I mean John Harbaugh.
Wow.
John Harbaugh has always been a hard-nosed, great coach. Yep. He's got a Super Bowl ring, I believe, Pete, because of that. And he's been in some, in the running virtually every year that he's been the head coach there. But what have they made their bones on? Defense. Do they have a great offense? The answer is yes, especially with, as you said, as soon as it happened, when King James came aboard, they started really doing some amazing things, Pete.
Yeah.
And he's the real king, by the way. But I will point out that they let 41 points go up on the board this past weekend. That is not, and granted, it's Baker Mayfield. It's a good, very good Tampa Bay team, but that was without Evans, Pete. I mean, Evans is out for I don't know how long, but Baltimore, I'm sorry, I said 31 points. They put up 41, but they let Baker Mayfield and the Bucks put up 31. That's not typical Baltimore football, Pete.
Yeah.
So I think this weekend they've got a great cure, though, because they're going to be playing the Cleveland Browns. They might shut them out.
That's the cure that every team wants, is to have a shot with the Cleveland Browns.
Yes.
And Watson, God knows what'll happen. I mean, obviously he's got the injury, so now he's out, but it wouldn't have mattered anyway. I mean, they weren't any better. Matter of fact, they might have been worse with him out there on the field than almost anybody else. All right, let's jump. And by the way, you meant King Henry. You actually said King James. It was King Henry that we're talking about here with Baltimore, just in case anybody's confused about that whole thing. All right, John. Right. Now, we talked about parity in college football, and I think it's really something that is pretty special. And this is something that makes it even more interesting. Alabama, they are a team that if you polled every sports writer in all of America and they said, all right, of all the schools out there that we had in the playoff, which one team will absolutely be there? I would say people might say Georgia first, but then second, they're going to say Alabama. They just are going to do it. John, Alabama's a 5-2 football team. They're going to be playing Missouri. Missouri is a 6-1 football team. This could get pretty interesting because why did Bama lose last week to Tennessee? Tennessee could run the football. Tennessee has a running back this year who's absolutely outrageously good. He doesn't get talked about hardly at all. His name is Sampson. He's got the hair and everything. But they are absolutely, they run the ball. They throw the ball a little bit. Heupel still likes to throw the ball, but they run the ball. They ran the ball right up the backside of Alabama this past week. Well, Missouri comes in. They've got a running back named Nate Knoll, John. He's averaging 6 yards a carry, and the kid's an absolute beast. They got another one, Marcus Carroll, is averaging 5 yards a carry, and they just in and out, in and out, in and out, and they both get to share the whole, the rock a little bit. I'll tell you what, Alabama, if they can't stop these two guys, they got a real problem, because if they drop to 5-3, they are not going to be in the college playoff. I don't think anybody's going to go undefeated this year. I really don't. But you're not going to get in with 3 losses, and Bama's kind of teetering on that. So they better watch out this week against Missouri, John. You and I have talked about them before. They've got Brady Cook at quarterback. He's done a very nice job, although his touchdowns aren't very big this year. They're making it on a team that's running the football first and a good defense. And they're still sitting in the SEC just like last year, John, where they finished, I think, 10-2. And they're sitting there right now at 6-1. Not so bad.
Not so bad. Well, I'll tell you somebody else who's not so bad, Pete, the Indiana defense.
Yeah.
And I know that this one had to sting a little bit for Pete, folks, because he likes to, along with Warren Buffett, he likes to root for Nebraska. That's not his main team. It's Minnesota, the Gophers. But you do like Nebraska, Pete. Yep. They got thumped like 56-7 by Indiana, another red and white team. So you had Big Red against Big Red and White. And, man, that was a tough one. I think that Indiana team is for real, Pete.
Yep.
Now, the difference is, folks, then Pete and I could talk about this a lot. You usually don't see a team like Alabama fade like they're fading because they've got the depth. Maybe that's one of the issues of the portal, because the kids that would have been stuck there and been forced into playing now halfway through the season, the kids are delighted to be playing at that point. But the depth is just not the same as it was before the portal existed. So what I'd say, Pete, is that used to be a big separator between teams like Indiana and teams like Georgia and Bama, because they just reload.
Yep.
They don't rebuild, they reload. Now they might be on a par with those teams, because those teams don't have that same depth that they used to have when they'd have 3 offensive tackles that could have started on any team in America, 3 or 5 offensive guards, 4 linebackers, and blah, blah, blah. In other words, they had a lot of extra folks. Now they probably have the 2 starters on middle linebacker or outside linebacker or whatever, and then really good kids behind them, but not the same level. They're not the 4-star recruits, because those 4-star recruits that weren't playing transferred. And they went to schools like Indiana or schools like Minnesota, because a lot of your Gophers, you told me this, Pete, a lot of the Gopher kids that were growing up in Minnesota that went to LSU, that went to Nebraska, have transferred back because they were backing up somebody at those schools. And they said, you know what? I'd rather play in front of my friends and family and start.
Yep. Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, you're exactly right, John. I mean, Minnesota used that as the blueprint. They brought back a kid who went to LSU. They brought back a kid who went to Clemson. They brought back a kid who went to Ohio State. All of these guys. We finally landed one this past year, by the way, and all he's done is been the defensive player of the week twice now, and he's a freshman from Esco. I know everybody knows Esco, Minnesota. I mean, it's on every map. I mean, everywhere. But this kid is special. Coy Parrish is his name, John, and he's unbelievable. He's stopped the previous couple of games. He's got an interception to close out the game. to win the football game, and he's played extremely well during the game. Punt return, kick return, you name it, the kid can do it all. He's a safety. He's a heck of a player, but I think you're right. The depth is what's changed. Indiana's got a problem, sort of, I think. I think they've got game day, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure it's game day this week at Indiana. The problem is the quarterback's got an injury with his thumb, which is not a good injury for a quarterback, obviously. So I don't know how they're going to be able to manage, how well they're going to be able to manage. They're really well coached, but to lose your quarterback, I think, is going to be something that's going to be really, really rough for them. We'll see how that works out. The defense has been great, as you said. They got their own version of the black shirts at Indiana, John.
Yep, some damn good football players in Indiana right now.